Well, I am really enthusiastic about today's special guest on the show. She is a bona fide sales expert and has all kinds of great information that's you're going to be able to apply right away to improve your sales. But before we get into the interview, let me do a formal introduction. Kay Miller was the first woman ever hired for outside sales by Amarok, a division of Anchor Hawking. Kay was later hired by Walker Exhaust, the largest automotive muffler manufacturer in the world. She became Walker's Salesperson of the Year and earned the nickname Muffler Mama. She's been a top performer in sales ever since, and now she consults and speaks to help others make more sales, people just like you. Kay is the author of the brand new book, Uncopyable Sales Secrets: How to Create an Unfair Advantage Over Your Competition. If you want to become an uncopyable salesperson and make more sales, you should get this book. It's full of creative and new ideas and has been called the most fun sales book you'll ever read. It's packed with personal stories and examples, plus powerful strategies and secrets that work. Follow the specific actions Kay recommends in the book, and you will make more sales quickly. So with that, I'd like to welcome our special guest, Kay Miller. Thanks for being here today, Kay.
Thank you very much, Michael. I am excited to be here for many reasons. And one of them, I only have one person I will do an interview for today, my birthday. So you're the one.
Well, I am honored that you would accept an interview with me, and my community is very appreciative of you.
Well, thank you. And thank you to your audience, the listener, the viewer.
Yes. So a big happy birthday to you, Kay. And we are looking to learn a lot from you today on your birthday. And so I'm going to jump into the first question, if that's all right. So I want to go back to the early days and understand first, just going into the background, how did you decide that sales was the right career for you?
I have to say it started when I was a kid. And I don't know about you, Michael, but I used to love to sell things. I don't know if you ever had a lemonade stand. I did not have a lemonade stand, but I got very creative with selling things to, relatives and to friends, and then the neighborhood. My name is Kay. I love the letters, the alliteration. So I used to have Kay's candles and, Kay's candy. And I would sell things, and especially the candy. I tell the story in the book about how a neighbor and I had a candy stand. And really, any business, if you're a child entrepreneur of any kind, you realize that sales drives everything. You can't, you don't have a business, you don't make money without sales. So we were selling this candy, and back in that day, there were penny candies at 7-Eleven, our local store. And we sold them for 2 cents, and we charged the premium for bringing them to the neighborhood when some of the littler kids couldn't go to the store yet. And it was so fun. We had customers lined up around the block practically, and we were fulfilling a need, and we were making money. And, as the older I got, I realized that's just pure sales. And it's the best kind of sales when you are getting somebody what they want, not shoving something down their throat or manipulating or all of the things that we hear that are bad about sales. But true sales to me is fun. It's fun and profitable, and I can't think of anything better. So when I got into college, I got a degree in marketing. And, at first I thought, oh, great, I'm going to get a job in marketing. Well, then I found out you really have to have an MBA to get in marketing. And so I went into sales, and I'm glad that happened, because I've enjoyed my sales career so much. And for everybody listening, you really have the best, job in the world. So that's my background of how I got started and where I fell in love with sales.
What a great story, Kay. We have a lot in common, actually, because I did start my own business when I was 15 years old. I was selling newspapers for the local paper in Southern Arizona. It's a rural community, but I also started my own little business because I love to sell. And I liked making extra money and realizing, wow, I could sell things and make money. I mean, it was this breakthrough understanding to me as a child that I can make money just by selling things to my friends. And I was hooked after that.
Right. For, that kind of sales, you don't need an education. You don't need, I don't know, you just have the desire and you figure it out. So good for you. I think that's great. And I think, even now, I'm sure you're the same way. I always stop at lemonade stands, or I always, and if they say, oh, and we also have these crafts we make, an upsell, I'm like, here, I'm in. So
Yeah.
I think it's the entrepreneurial spirit in the best way.
Yeah, absolutely. So many of the people who are fans of my channel, Kay, are newer salespeople, because I generally focus on people who have 0 to 5 years of sales experience, and they have so much to learn, and they want to accelerate their success by watching the videos here. What advice do you give to new salespeople who are not experienced in selling yet, and they're not sure exactly what to focus on to get better?
Well, the first line in my book, which is on the back shelf, I didn't pull one up with me, but it's one of the orange books. Great, yours arrived. Yes, that's right. You bought it on Amazon. I also have an autographed copy to you on the way. The first line in my book is that my first sales call was a disaster. So I talk about what stopped me that time was fear. And I think in the early days of sales, you have to get past that fear. I do have a lot of, ways to cope with fear in the book. Everything from your mindset to, meditation to listening to music. But overcoming fear is huge. But for you newer salespeople, this fear is part of this game. And just because you are failing at first doesn't mean that you won't succeed. Really, determination will get you success in sales, no matter what. You will figure out the tactics and the strategies if you are determined to learn this. So I think that determination to say, okay, I sucked at that first sales call. I am not done. So, because even as experienced salespeople, I do talk about fear a lot in the book. Even if you're experienced, I'm experienced. There are clients I get butterflies in my stomach when I have to call a CEO. Fear is a sign that you're taking a risk and that you are calling on contacts that will really make a difference in your sales career. So I'd say, don't let failure stop you, and just say, okay, fear, it's just the old comfort zone. The only way to get more comfortable at doing something, unfortunately, is doing it, but it gets easier.
That's good to know, because I know it is difficult in the beginning to get over that fear and that rejection that is just part of the sales career, that you will have to deal with lots of rejection. And I still deal with that myself too, just like Kay is saying. It doesn't stop. We don't stop being scared. We don't stop getting rejected just because we're experienced and we know what we're doing. It still happens to us. We have just learned to accept it as part of the way it goes. So then we see this picture in the background, okay, this big moose, right? And you have it well lit, and we can see, and I know you referenced in the book the idea of finding your moose. So tell us, what does that mean, Kay, finding your moose?
Well, I hope anybody watching this will really remember that picture of the moose when they are selling. When you are selling, the analogy is, say you are a hunter and you wanted to hunt moose. Now, I am not a hunter, except for deals on shoes. But if you were to hunt moose, where would you go? What would you use as moose bait? What kind of language would you need to do to talk to the moose? And I still remember in college learning about opportunity cost. And I think that's so fascinating, because whatever time you're spent doing something means you can't spend time doing something else. So if you call your target market, in our language of Uncopyable, we call your ideal target your moose. And it's so easy to remember. And the more you can define your ideal prospect, which is your moose, the more effective you can be. The more time you can spend getting their attention, the more money, the more time you can learn about them. So your moose is really, some people say avatar, we say moose. Who is your moose? That is your ideal target. And I'll add one more thing, because one thing that's so helpful to define your moose, if you have any customers at all, unless you're brand new and first day on the job, who are you already selling to that makes you the most money, that is the most pleasant to deal with, that you like, that your product or service really fits? Take that profile. And if you're looking to define your moose, it's great to look at your own clients now, your customers, and say, okay, how can I find more of those? But remember, if you're hunting moose and you're wasting your time finding rabbits or deer or bear, that is a waste of time. You could be spending that time on your moose. So that's what the moose is about. And to me, it's really a key concept in sales and how I've become successful. It's strategic.
It's so important, this idea of opportunity cost, because if we're going after a bear and we should be going after a moose, that's one less moose that we could be going after.
Exactly.
That's super important to understand. I listened to an interview many years ago where the guest was Robert Ringer, and he said, do business with people who want to do business with you. And I thought, boy, that's the most obvious advice I've heard in a long time. Like, hello, but that's your moose. The moose is your ideal customer who actually has needs that you can solve. And that's who wants to do business with you. When you're chasing that bear because you're desperate for any game that's out there, but that bear doesn't have the same needs as your moose. So you're trying to, as you said earlier, force your product onto that bear when you don't have to force it onto the moose.
Exactly. And, we talked about rejection. We all hate it. We have to deal with it. But your level of rejection is going to be much lower if you take the time ahead of time to really target and learn about your moose.
Thank you for that, Kay. It never will cease to be important to hear this again and again and again, to go after your moose. So please really pay attention to that. So Kay, let's say you found your moose, but you can't get to them. It's hard to get the attention of prospects these days because of so much information deluge and so many different channels of communication, and each person's day is so busy. What do you recommend to get in the door so that you could have a conversation with your moose?
And that is probably one of the biggest challenges I hear from salespeople. I can't get in the door. And as I told you, Michael, I created a giveaway just for your audience, and you can share the link later, that is called 5 Proven Ways to Get in the Door, because that is probably one of the biggest pain points. I like to kind of introduce this topic by saying, look at what everyone else is doing and don't do it. Because we are all so tempted to look at the competition and say, oh, they're, doing X or they're doing Y, so let's try that. But then there's this sea of sameness. And with technology, which has been, as we just talked about beforehand, a huge blessing. I mean, what would we do without these things? I probably wouldn't be at this meeting. But technology has also created this, again, a sea of sameness, where we email, we contact our customers on LinkedIn, we call them and leave voicemails, and we try to get creative with messaging and headlines. But if we're all doing that, then we're not going to stand out. So I have some techniques in this giveaway that I'm offering that will help you cut through the clutter. Some of it is internet and video based, but a lot of it is tactile, like direct mail. And one of the examples I give in the book is a story about a friend of mine. It's actually, she's my ski buddy, and she sells ads for Valpak. I shouldn't say ads, advertising campaigns, because she develops big campaigns for companies that will get them more customers. So she had found a customer, an large automotive service repair service, whichever way that is to say. She thought she'd be perfect for him because this owner was not getting the reach that she thought he could. So she called the office, got the gatekeepers that wouldn't let her through, emailed, no response, even made cold calls. He was always busy. So we were driving up skiing one day and I said, why don't you try something different? Let's see if he'll take your call. And what I suggested, and I talk about in this giveaway, is a greeting card in the mail, but not just any greeting card. She found his picture online, which it's easy to do on social media anymore. There's hardly anybody you can't find some picture of.
Mhm.
And she put the cover, said wanted, and then she put his picture on the cover. And then in the inside, she had a very, light message saying, boy, you have great gatekeepers. I really feel like I have something that can help you, which I know, Michael, you've talked about in some of the videos I've watched. Instead of saying, making it about yourself, she said, I have an idea to help you. And so she sent that and we were like, oh, I wonder if he'll take your call, you'll take her call. Well, I'm so excited. I'm tripping over my words because he called her and he said, I have never received anything like this. When can we meet? So not only did she get the appointment, but he said that she proved herself as somebody different than all the other salespeople. And she's got this large ongoing contract with him for digital advertising, mailers, all kinds of stuff. So that is a simple thing that you can do. And, there are different services. You can even do this now through your local Walgreens or CVS where you put a picture on a card. It costs, conservatively less than $3. And they even will mail it for you. I just think that's the greatest tip in the world. I tell it all the time, and yet I really don't think a lot of people use it. But just imagine opening a piece of mail, and instead of it being about, Joe Blow's service, it's about you. So that is one of the ways to get in the door. I hope I hope you'll download that guide, because I've got a bunch of other ways, and they're creative. They're different. They're not like everybody else.
That is music to my ears, Kay. I am so into being creative that I believe that one of the reasons that I've been able to be successful in my work as a coach, a trainer, is because I am more creative than average. But it's not because I'm more brilliant than average. It's because I work at it. I work at being creative.
Well, you might be more brilliant than average.
Maybe so.
Although I remember as a parent being startled by the words, the average child really is average. Like, not my kid.
Well, everybody says they're better than average drivers too, and we know that statistics make that not possible.
Yeah, right.
But my point is that you really have to work at it. That it's easy to do what everybody else is doing. That's easy, but it's not easy to do something a little bit different. It takes some ingenuity, it takes some creativity, it takes some time and concerted effort, thinking, what can I do that's different? But the payoff, she was able to land this great account that is paying off 10,000 times the cost of creating a personalized greeting card. I mean, let's be real. So that idea of breaking away from the sea of sameness, I love it. I love it.
I have, as I've listened to some of your interviews, I know that you love that word creative and creativity, and that's a big part of your brand and what you help your folks do. So yeah, we are definitely in sync with that. And it's just a matter of, finding something that is so different. And I want to make one more point. My friend Trudy, she knew this customer was her moose. So you're not going to be sending, this type of greeting card or any of the ideas that I have in the book to everyone. This is not a blast. This is finding your moose, and then you have the incentive to get creative, because like you said, this could pay back exponentially.
You were a top salesperson. As I said, you were salesperson of the year. You were nicknamed Muffler Mama. If we put you under a microscope and analyze what you did versus others who worked on that sales team where you were salesperson of the year, what differences would we find in how you operated?
As one of very few women, I said I was the first woman hired by the first company. By the time I went to Walker Manufacturing, where I had a very glamorous position, selling mufflers and catalytic converters and calling on distributors and garages.
Yeah, real
um,
glamorous.
I was, I had one advantage, and it was also a disadvantage in a way, but I found a way to make it work. And that's that I was a woman. So right there, I was not just the sea of sameness. I did, however, have a credibility problem because I was a young, petite woman, walking into these, garages in my penny loafers, with my little briefcase. And, the guys would kind of like, what the heck do you know about, mufflers and cars? And, people have said, this hasn't really been confirmed, but that I'm not a great driver. So I really don't, I'm not strong on cars. But anyway, so I realized what the perception was. So I went to one of my garages, one of the customers that my distributors were selling to, and said, will you teach me how to install a muffler? And they're like, yeah, we can do that. Have you ever used a welding torch? I'm like, no. So the guy said, well, the first thing you need to do is go buy some steel toe boots. And I'm looking at his boots, and they are ugly. And he could see the face I was making. He said, unless you don't mind losing a toe. Well, of course, I minded losing a toe. So I went to Red Wing Shoe Store and bought some boots. I've got the whole story in my book, and it's got some very comical elements, but I'll make it short for here. But I went in and they helped me install an entire muffler system. So it's all the pipes and the gaskets and everything that you have to weld together. And I was wearing this heavy gear. I was wearing a welding helmet. And do you remember the movie Flashdance?
I do, actually.
Jennifer Beals, of the opening scene of that movie, is welding. She's on an assembly line. Do you remember that? It's very dark.
Yeah.
And as you pan in on the opening scene, this person, you don't know if it's a woman or a man. You assume it's a man, of course, puts down their welding torch and slowly takes off their helmet. And you see it's this beautiful Jennifer Beals. And then she pulls it all the rest of the way off and shakes her head, and her curls fall to her shoulders. So I'm under this car welding, and I'm kind of thinking, dang, I'm kind of like Jennifer Beals, And so finally we're done. We put all this stuff down, and the guys in the shop are kind of looking at me, right? And I take off my helmet, and across the garage, there's one of these little utility sinks with a mirror over it. And I catch sight of my reflection. I was not Jennifer Beals. My hair was stuck to my head. My face was red. The mascara is running down. So it was a very humbling and comical moment. That story became the Muffler Mama story. Those guys respected me because I wasn't afraid to walk a mile in their boots, and really learn. I mean, there were a lot of guys calling on them. Do you think any of them said, will you teach me to do what you're doing? Anytime you can go to a customer and say, I want to learn from you. I know all the, the stats and the part numbers and the materials that make this product, but I want to know what it's like for you, and that story, I think, really set me apart. Not I think, I know it set me apart. Yeah. And I don't know if I really thought that all through from the beginning of what I was creating by doing that, but it was just that attitude that I want you, as you're watching this, to think, how can I let my customer know that I will do whatever it takes for them to really, really do a good job? So there are so many ways to do that, but really being willing to understand the customer is going to set you apart, because a lot of salespeople don't care as much as that.
I love that story. The other theme that I get from the story too, it's a commitment to the profession of selling muffler systems, because if you weren't really committed, if you were just kind of just checking it out, you wouldn't show that level of interest. The fact that you were willing to do that tells them, I'm here and I'm staying here. I'm not going anywhere. That determination that you talked about earlier came through. Determination, commitment, curiosity, uh, a rapport. We talk about establishing rapport with your customer. Like, what a great way to establish rapport by putting on the helmet and welding together a muffler system. Like, awesome.
When
Really
you put
great.
and when you put yourself in the shoes of that customer, can you imagine? You know, they thought that I was the greatest after that, and and others did too. Like I said, there were some rough times at first, but I'll tell you, all in all, these customers were so good to me. It was a great experience.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh, I like that so much. Now, this is kind of an interesting question here, Kay, that in the book, you talk about thinking like Sherlock Holmes. And we don't think of Sherlock Holmes as one of the great sales trainers. But apparently, some things that Sherlock Holmes did could be helpful for us in terms of trying to understand what the prospect really wants. So can you expand on that a little bit for us?
Sure. I think one of the biggest mistakes salespeople make is talking too much. And you know
No
what?
way.
I know. Alert, alert, alert the media. And you know what? The types of people who, there are all kinds of ways to sell, all kinds of people to that can succeed in sales, quiet people and talkative people. Us talkative people have a big challenge because it really is about listening. And we've all heard that over and over. You've got to listen to the customer. One of the biggest challenges for me still is to ask a question, and then be quiet. Silence is very, we want to feel that silence, but no, we have to let the customer think and, don't buy back the sale. But beyond listening, I love to think about Sherlock Holmes. If we can be a detective, look for clues. If you meet a client on in person or on Zoom. Now, when we got on, your producer was here too, and the first thing you commented on was that moose in the background because you were observing my background. You're looking for clues. Now you can see I've got my books set up here, and of course I want you to notice those clues. But think about that when you are with a customer. It's not just asking and listening to their answers. It's really being a detective and looking for clues. How can you find out what is most important to them so that you don't just give them the spiel on, the 100 reasons you're the best. Find out what are the 3 most important things. Find out their interests. I tell a story in the book about a customer I couldn't really, I was having trouble building a rapport with over the phone. Well, when I went into his office, I could see that he was a huge Little League supporter. He sponsored teams throughout the community and had for years. The plaques were all over his wall. Oh my gosh, bingo. Be a Sherlock Holmes, be a detective, look for clues.
Great. Okay. So now we have a better understanding. And remember that many of the ideas that Kay is sharing with us are yours by investing a small amount of money in this book, right? I've talked about the value of reading books many times over the years on my channel. Please do yourself a favor, sign up for the bonus that Kay is offering because that's free, and then
Yes,
invest a little bit in
This-
getting even more wisdom by investing in the book.
And
So,
let me say, being a lifelong learner is huge. I've been around the block a few times, right? And it's not only that there's new information, because some of the things that you read in my book are things you'll say, oh, I know. But do we do? We kind of get out of the habit, we forget. We need to hear it over and over. We need to be lifelong learners and constantly absorbing new information so that we can get better and stay at the top of our game. Just like you follow Michael, and he's always sharing wisdom over and over. And thank goodness for people like Michael and me. People do need to hear that over and over in different ways. Otherwise, we kind of get into our bad habits and we forget stuff that we know. We forget what we know.
yeah, we need to be reminded and reinforce our good habits because that's what propels us forward ultimately. So last question, Kay. any final advice for salespeople who are relatively new to the profession? I know I asked you this earlier, that I just want to come back to it because new salespeople, there's so many challenges. And we talked about the fear and the rejection and finding your moose and establishing some good habits, separating yourself from the sea of sameness. So any other final advice that you'd like to give to newer salespeople?
Well, I'd like to give one action step that anyone can do today, and it will arm you with some great information that you can use to sell other prospects. And that is to call one of your customers. Call a customer and say, would you do me a favor? I'd like to hear in your words why you buy. Because that customer has made the decision to buy from you, even if your product is more expensive, or maybe the delivery takes longer, or whatever the objections that you hear from other customers are, that you have customers that have seen the bigger picture and have said, okay, it's worth it because of what? One of those reasons might be you. We all know salespeople who have moved to different companies and taken their customer with them because your relationship is so valuable. But I think if you call even one customer or call several, people love to talk and share and educate you on their viewpoints. And I really feel like as a newer salesperson, especially, get it from their words of why do they buy from you? It's gold. It's gold.
I like that. And I'll tell you that I'll bet very few people really do that. They don't take the time to do that, to check in with customers like that. So
Well,
I
the
think
people who do are uncopyable.
oh, thank you, Kay. I think that's fantastic final closing advice for the people who've been watching today's interview. There's been so much great wisdom shared here. And I just want to thank you very much for taking time on your birthday of all days to be with us here, Kate. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much. Really appreciate it.